Welcome to another deep dive. We've got some truly fascinating stories for you today. Everything from international politics to uh, crime and even a little bit of
It
nature.
sounds like something for everyone.
Definitely, yeah. We're going to see if we can find the human stories behind these headlines.
Yeah.
Uncover the connections to these larger forces that are shaping our world.
I'm excited.
Okay, so let's jump right in. First up, Syria. I mean, wow, talk about a political earthquake. After decades under the Assad family, the country is now being declared free.
Right. Free, but
Yeah,
under the control of HTS,
exactly, yeah.
an Islamist faction with, well, their own agenda. It's not really a simple liberation story, is it?
No, not at all.
Yeah.
And HTS, this is a group that, they were one of the main rebel groups fighting Assad during the Syrian civil war.
Right. A very complicated history.
Right. So their rise to power is,
Mhm.
it's raising a lot of questions about what happens next in Syria.
For sure. And we have to think about all the people who are actually living through this. You've shared some firsthand accounts from Damascus where supposedly life is returning to normal, whatever that means.
Right.
What's it actually like on the ground?
Yeah, I mean, what does normal even look like in a country that's undergone this kind of dramatic transformation?
Right. I mean, some people might be relieved to see the end of the Assad regime, but you have to imagine that there are others who are, really worried about what life will be like under HTS. I mean, remember, Syria was a secular state under Assad,
Yeah.
and HTS has a very, very different vision, a vision rooted in Islamic law.
Yeah.
So this transition, I think it's likely to be a bumpy one.
Yeah, definitely. And then you add on top of that, that's not just internal struggles they're dealing with.
Right.
Israel has already launched airstrikes,
Yeah.
saying, they're trying to prevent weapons from falling into the wrong hands. But, I don't know, it feels like a bit of a power play too, doesn't it?
It does, a little bit, yeah. I mean, they are concerned, about groups hostile to Israel getting their hands on weapons, especially chemical weapons.
Right.
But yeah, this is a chance for them to try to shape the future of Syria in a way that, is good for their own interests.
Okay, so let's move on now from Syria over to France, where there's this really disturbing case, this trial of Giselle Pellicot. 50 men accused of raping her. Over a decade.
Wow.
And it gets worse because her husband, Dominique Pellicot, was filming it.
Oh my gosh.
And he's saying that it was all consensual, that it was all part of some kind of sex game.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so, I mean, this trial it's really sparked a lot of debate in France about consent
Yeah.
and the responsibility of bystanders. I mean, what makes this case so shocking is just the sheer number of people involved
Right.
and the fact that it went on for so long. And Giselle Pellicot, she testified and she said, if they thought it was consensual, why didn't any of them go to the police?
It's a very good question.
It is, yeah.
I mean, how could so many people just be complicit in this? I think this trial it's forcing France to really confront this dark side of their society, the sexual violence, the stuff that just gets, hidden away.
Right, it's making them really take a hard look at themselves.
Absolutely. And you have to think about the power dynamics. Dominique Pellicot, he was allegedly manipulating his wife and these other men, showing how abuse, how coercion, it can happen in quote-unquote normal relationships.
Right.
I don't know what's going to happen with the trial, but it's having a huge impact already.
So from a courtroom in France now to a legal battle in the U.S., this is a really high-profile case. Sean Diddy Combs.
Okay.
He's facing some serious allegations of sexual assault.
Hmm.
One of them is, a lawsuit claiming that he drugged and raped a 13-year-old girl back in 2000.
Oh, wow.
And to make things even more complicated, Jay-Z is also named in this lawsuit.
Well, these allegations are, well, if they're true, they're extremely disturbing. Both Combs and Jay-Z, they've denied any wrongdoing. And of course, they deserve a fair trial. But the lawyer representing the accusers is, oh, well, it's Tony Busby.
Right.
He's known for taking on these really big cases. And he's saying he's got a ton of evidence.
Yeah, so this could be a huge case. Could really send shockwaves through the music industry.
It could, yeah. I mean, it's definitely got a lot of people's attention, and it brings up, the whole conversation about power, especially in the entertainment industry,
Right.
and holding people in positions of authority accountable for their actions.
Okay, so let's shift gears again now. This time we're going down to Australia, where there was a fire at a synagogue in Melbourne.
Okay.
And it's being investigated as a possible hate crime. And this is especially worrying because we've been seeing this rise in anti-Semitism in the country.
Yeah, it is. I mean, this attack It's really unsettling. 3 people, they had masks on, they were seen spreading, something to make the fire burn faster, setting the whole building on fire. It's left the Jewish community really feeling scared, vulnerable. It's a reminder that intolerance, extremism, it can show up in some really, really scary ways.
And in another Australian story, this one sending shockwaves through the sports world, champion cyclist Rohan Dennis has pleaded guilty to charges
Uh-oh.
related to a car accident that, that killed his wife,
Mm-hmm.
Melissa Hoskins, who was an Olympian herself.
Oh, that's just awful. Weren't they like a golden couple in the cycling world?
Yeah, they were. And they were both so passionate about the sport. I mean, it's a real tragedy. We don't know a lot of the details about the accident, but the fact that he's pleaded guilty, it means he's taking responsibility.
Right.
This is just a real stark reminder that, even the most successful people, they can be involved in these really tragic events.
For sure.
Okay, well, let's take a break from all this, this heavy stuff for a second.
Okay.
And talk about something pretty amazing. This humpback whale that swam over 13,000 kilometers from the Pacific all the way to the Indian Ocean.
Can you imagine?
I know.
What a journey. I mean, the scientists, they think this might be because of climate change.
Uh-huh.
As the oceans get warmer and the currents change, these animals have to, adapt their migration patterns to find food. This whale's story, it's like, a reminder of how connected our planet is.
It is, yeah.
And how far-reaching the impacts of climate change really are.
Yeah. It kind of gives you hope, amidst all this other stuff we've been talking about.
Right.
Like nature's resilience. But speaking of turmoil, over in South Korea, there's been this disturbing incident. The former defense minister, Kim Kwon-jen, he attempted suicide.
Oh, wow.
And this is after he was linked to this plot to impose martial law back in 2017. So this has really shaken South Korea.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, it's bringing up all these old debates about, the country's history with authoritarian rule, how fragile their democracy really is. I mean, for a lot of people, it's a scary reminder of, the days of military dictatorship.
Yeah.
How hard they had to fight for their freedom. It's making everyone watch very closely.
It is.
What's South Korea going to do? How are they going to deal with this and make sure the bad stuff from the past doesn't happen again?
Right.
It's a big moment for them, for sure.
So let's move from political intrigue in South Korea down to Brazil. President Lula da Silva is recovering from surgery for a brain bleed. And this is, it comes at a really critical time for him. I mean, he's got a lot of challenges to deal with. So Lula's health, super important for Brazil's stability. He's like this iconic figure in their politics.
Right.
And they need his leadership to navigate all these complex issues they're facing.
For sure.
So the fact that his surgery went well, that's a huge relief. But everyone's going to be watching his recovery really closely.
I bet.
Speaking of leaders facing some tough times, over in Israel, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, he's right in the middle of this high-stakes corruption trial.
Yeah.
And he's, fighting hard.
Yeah.
Denying all the charges.
Yeah.
Saying it's all, a political witch hunt.
It's happening against this backdrop of, rising tensions in the region, the conflicts in Gaza and Syria. It's all adding a lot of pressure. This trial, I mean, it could change everything.
It could.
His political future, Israeli politics.
It's like something out of like a political thriller.
Yeah.
This powerful leader fighting for his survival.
Exactly. I mean, the stakes are so high. If they find him guilty, he could be removed from office.
Right.
And then who knows what happens to Israel. But if he's acquitted, he'll be even stronger. His supporters, I mean, they'll be unstoppable. It's a nail-biter.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
The whole world's watching. And speaking of global attention, the U.S. just transferred a massive $20 billion in aid to Ukraine.
Wow, $20 billion.
Yeah, a huge show of support.
Yeah.
But with Donald Trump about to return to the White House, no one knows how long that support will last.
It's true. Trump's stance on Ukraine, it's been, unpredictable, to say the least. I mean, in the past, he's been skeptical about the U.S. getting involved, and who knows, he might be more friendly with Russia this time around. So yeah, a lot of people are worried about what's going to happen with American aid.
Yeah, this is a really big deal for Europe. We'll have to wait and see what Trump does when he gets back in the White House.
It's going to be a tense time, that's for sure. Everyone's holding their breath. What's the new administration going to do? What's it going to mean for Ukraine?
Right. Okay, let's end this part on a more positive note.
Okay.
There's this incredible story coming out of Spain about a special police unit, all women. They're dedicating themselves to helping victims of sex trafficking.
Wow. That's amazing.
It is, yeah. What's really unique about this unit is that they're not just rescuing these women.
Right.
They're giving them ongoing support, helping them to heal. They're building these really deep personal relationships with them.
That's incredible. I mean, it's such a great example of how law enforcement can, not just arrest criminals, but also be there for the victims,
Yeah.
help them,
Yeah.
care for them.
It's a real beacon of hope, showing that even in the worst situations, empathy, human connection, it can make all the difference.
There really is.
It's just such a powerful example of, you know, people choosing to make a positive impact.
Yeah.
Their work is truly inspiring.
It is. It's amazing, how that story, those women police officers, kind of connects to all these big things we've been talking about. The political stuff.
Yeah.
The threats, and yet there's this goodness, this resilience.
It's a good point. Like, even when it feels like the world is, falling apart,
Yeah.
there are people fighting for good,
Yeah.
trying to make things better, one story at a time.
I love that. One story at a time.
Yeah. And sometimes those stories give us a little bit of hope.
Hope, yeah. Speaking of change, over in India, things aren't looking so good. Their economy, it's slowed down quite a bit.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and the experts, they're worried about things like, people not buying as much, wages staying the same.
That's got to be a tough situation, especially with India trying to, become this big global economic power.
It is. It's a mix of things going on. I mean, internally, their government, they've been trying to make changes, to boost growth and get foreign investment.
Right.
But then you got all this stuff happening globally, like interest rates going up, trade tensions.
Yeah.
It's putting pressure on a lot of countries like India.
It's a tough balancing act.
It is. And whatever happens, it's not just going to affect India.
Right. It'll ripple out.
Exactly.
Okay. So while we're talking about global stuff, we got to talk about this animal rights movement. I mean, New Zealand, they just banned greyhound racing.
They did?
Yeah. They're worried about the dogs.
Good for them. I mean, the activists, they've been fighting to stop this for years.
I bet.
It's part of this bigger thing, don't you think? People are waking up to the fact that, we can't just use animals for entertainment. Not if they're going to get hurt.
Definitely. It's like our values are changing.
Yeah.
People are realizing we're all connected. We are. This move by New Zealand, I bet it's going to make other countries think twice.
Oh, for sure. It's going to put pressure on them. This is big.
It is, yeah. Okay, back to the U.S. There's this murder case that's really brought up some of the frustrations people have with healthcare. Luigi Mangione, he's the guy accused of killing the CEO of United Healthcare, Brian Thompson.
Okay, yeah.
He apparently left a note, handwritten, all about how angry he was at the healthcare system.
Wow. That's intense. I mean, it's almost like he's this folk hero driven to do something terrible by the system that just felt rigged against him.
Right.
Of course, violence is never okay.
No.
But that note,
Yeah.
it makes you think about how messed up healthcare is in the U.S.
It does. It talks about corporate America, especially healthcare, as like parasites. It's scary to see how much distrust people have.
Yeah, and how disillusioned.
Like, the system is designed to help the rich and powerful and no one else.
It's true. In this case, it's going to be front and center in all the debates about fixing healthcare.
It will, yeah. I mean, it shows the real human cost of a system that a lot of people see is just too expensive, too much bureaucracy, too focused on profits instead of patients.
Definitely.
And speaking of controversial figures, Donald Trump is back in the news with some pretty bold plans for his second term.
Like what?
Ending birthright citizenship.
Yeah.
Pardoning those January 6th rioters.
Yeah.
Investigating his opponents. I mean, some people are saying it's alarming.
Wow. I mean, he's not wasting any time, is he? It's going to be just as crazy as his first term.
Probably.
I bet the Democrats are already gearing up to fight him. But his supporters, they're going to love it. It's just going to divide the country even more.
It will. And as if all that wasn't enough, he's bringing back the debates about climate change and vaccines.
Oh, no. Not those again. His stance on those issues is, it's worrying.
It is, yeah.
I mean, there's so much evidence about climate change. And vaccines, we know they're safe. But his words, they can undermine people's trust in science. Make these divisions even worse. It's a bad sign. All this misinformation, these conspiracy theories, they're still finding an audience.
It's true, especially with people who feel like, the system is failing them.
Exactly. I think it shows how important it is to, think critically.
Yeah.
Be smart about what we read and hear.
Okay, let's move on to something completely different. Back to that amazing police unit in Spain.
Oh, yeah, those women.
All women. helping sex trafficking victims. I mean, it's a powerful example of how we can use compassion, empathy, to fight this awful crime.
It really is. They're going above and beyond those officers, building real relationships with these women, helping them heal from all that trauma.
It's a reminder that even in the darkest places, there's still kindness.
Absolutely. Speaking of resilience, there's something interesting happening in Africa. Former President John Mahama, he's back in power in Ghana.
Oh, wow.
After 8 years, he won in a landslide.
I guess the people wanted change. Maybe they weren't happy with how the economy was being handled.
Yeah, that could be it. And get this is the 5th time this year that an opposition candidate has won in Africa.
Really?
It's like this wave of democratic transitions, people wanting more from their leaders.
That's a good sign for democracy.
It is, but there's still a lot of work to do.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of African countries are still dealing with poverty, inequality, corruption.
And there are still some places where, authoritarian leaders just won't give up power.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a mixed bag. It'll be interesting to see how it all unfolds.
So let's talk about something a little less hopeful now. The tension between France and Niger, especially with that uranium mining situation, things are heating up.
Yeah, the junta, they're serious about pushing France out of their uranium industry.
But France needs that uranium.
Yeah.
It's a big part of their nuclear power. What are they going to do?
Well, it's a problem for them, for sure. It could mean they have to find uranium somewhere else, which could be more expensive or, not as reliable. It's a reminder that putting all your eggs in one basket, especially when it comes to something as important as energy, can be risky.
So it's not just about resources.
Right. It's about power. Who's in control?
France has been involved in Niger for a long time, going back to colonial times.
Yeah, and that's created a lot of resentment.
Right.
The junta, they're using that, saying they're fighting for Niger's independence.
And of course, Russia sees an opportunity.
Always. They're ready to step in and, spread their influence. It's like this global game of chess playing out in Africa.
Right, and often it's the people who suffer.
It's true.
Okay, let's switch gears to the business world. The Adani Group, this huge Indian company, they want to be the leaders in clean energy, but they're facing some accusations in the U.S.
What kind of accusations?
Bribery, corruption.
Oh, that's not good.
No. It could really hurt their reputation,
Yeah.
make people think twice about investing in renewable energy.
Yeah, and Adani, they're denying everything. But this case, it could drag on for a while. It could hurt India's plans for clean energy. It's a reminder that even with something as important as transitioning to, a more sustainable future, there can still be ethical problems. I need more transparency.
Yeah.
Accountability.
And we can't forget about ethics just because we're trying to make a profit.
Agreed.
Okay, let's go to Australia again, but this time it's a story about their immigration policies, how strict they are. This family from Sri Lanka, they were seeking asylum.
Yeah.
They got detained on this remote island
Oh, no.
for over 3 years. The conditions were terrible.
That's awful. It's a reminder of what refugees go through all over the world, fleeing their homes because of war, persecution, natural disasters.
It is.
Australia, their policy of detaining people offshore, it's been criticized a lot.
Yeah, for being cruel, violating human rights.
Okay.
This family, they've talked about people harming themselves, trying to commit suicide.
Oh, my gosh.
Their own daughter, they said she just lost all hope.
It's really tragic. It makes you think, we need a better way to treat people who are just seeking refuge.
We do. It's a question of, our morals. What kind of world do we want to live in?
Okay, let's go to the world of sports now. There's this young cricketer, Prithvi Shaw. He was supposed to be the next big thing,
Oh, yeah, I've heard of him.
but his career's kind of gone off track. Inconsistency, disciplinary problems, off-field controversies.
It's tough, the pressure to perform at that level.
Yeah.
These young athletes, they're not always prepared for the fame, the money, all the temptations.
It's true. I think it shows how important it is for them to have good support systems,
Absolutely.
people to mentor them.
Yeah,
And they need to learn how to be resilient, how to deal with all the stress.
for sure. It's a good reminder that even the most talented people, they can struggle. Yeah. Okay, from sports now to a political earthquake in South Korea. Earlier this week, President Yoon Suk-yeol, he declared martial law
He did.
just for a little bit. But it was enough to really shake things up. It brought back all these memories of their difficult past.
Wow. I mean, martial law, that's a big deal.
It is. The lawmakers, they reversed it quickly, but it started this whole debate about how much power the president should have,
Right.
how fragile their democracy is. For a lot of South Koreans, hearing those words, martial law, it brings back some really dark times.
It does, yeah. It's a chilling reminder that even in countries that seem to have strong democracies, things can change quickly.
They can. It's a reminder that we got to protect our freedoms.
We do.
Be vigilant. This is a wake-up call, not just for South Korea, but for everyone.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. Politics, social movements, the economy, even the natural world. But we've got a few more stories to unpack before we wrap things up.
Let's do it. There's always more to explore.
Right. Okay, so let's circle back to that tension between France and Niger, that uranium situation.
Yeah.
It seems like the junta is really serious about pushing France out of their uranium industry.
Oh, yeah. They're not messing around. They took over that Somaïr mine, the one that was run by that French company, Orano.
It's a bold move.
It is. They want to control their own resources.
But what does that mean for France? I mean, their nuclear power program relies so heavily on Niger's uranium.
Well, it's not good for them. They might have to find uranium somewhere else, which might be more expensive or less reliable. It's a risk to depend on just one supplier for something so important.
Right. So it's not just about the uranium itself.
Right.
It's about power.
Exactly. Control.
And their history is so complicated, France being involved in Niger since colonial times.
Yeah, a lot of people in Niger see it as, France still trying to control them.
And Russia's watching all this, ready to step in.
Of course.
Yeah.
It's this big power struggle playing out in Africa.
Right. It's like these global rivalries. They often end up hurting the people who live there.
They do. It's sad.
Okay, let's go back to the war in Ukraine for a minute. There was a car bomb attack.
Oh.
Yeah, it killed a former prison boss in Russian-occupied territory. And this is just the latest in a string of targeted killings.
It's a reminder that the war isn't really over.
It's not. No.
Even with the ceasefire, there's still so much violence,
Right.
instability.
It's scary to think that even when the fighting stops, the violence can continue.
It can. And often, it's even worse.
Yeah. All these killings, they create fear, paranoia. It makes it so hard to build trust, to find peace.
It does. I don't know how they're going to break this cycle.
Okay, let's talk about something a little lighter for a minute. Jamie Foxx.
The actor.
Yeah. He finally talked about that health scare he had last year.
Oh, yeah. What was it? I couldn't remember.
He had a stroke.
Oh, wow. A stroke. I'm glad he's okay.
Me too, yeah. It's amazing to hear him talk about it so openly.
It is.
There's still such a stigma around strokes, brain stuff.
There is.
Hopefully, him talking about it will encourage other people to get help if they need it.
For sure.
He's even joking about it, like when he got to the hospital, he thought he was in the wrong place.
That's great. I mean, he's got such a good attitude.
He does. It's inspiring.
It is. It's a reminder that anyone can have health problems.
Yeah.
And getting help quickly can really make a difference.
Okay, speaking of high-stakes drama, Rupert Murdoch, the media mogul. He's been in court with his own kids.
What? Why?
They're fighting over his media empire.
Oh, wow. That's juicy. It's like a soap opera, Family feuds, billions of dollars, the future of news.
It is, and it's all playing out in public.
I know. It's crazy to think how much power the media has. And what happens with family businesses, it can be so messy.
It can. This case could change how we get our news, how we're entertained, for years to come.
Wow.
Okay, and lastly, a really sad story. An apartment building exploded in The Hague.
Oh, no.
Yeah, 6 people died.
That's terrible.
It's a real tragedy. And it's brought up all these questions about building safety, how prepared they are for emergencies.
Makes sense. I mean, it's a reminder that accidents can happen anywhere.
They can.
Even in places that seem safe.
Right.
It's so sad.
It is. It makes you think maybe they need stricter rules for buildings.
Yeah. Better safety measures.
Sometimes it takes something terrible happening to make us realize what needs to change.
That's true.
Well, that brings us to the end of another deep dive. We've talked about so much today.
We have.
It's been a journey for sure.
It has. Hopefully everyone listening has learned something new about our world.
I hope so too. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Remember, the world is always changing. There's always something new to discover. Stay curious, keep exploring. We'll see you next time for another dive into what's shaping our world.